Hello, everyone. Welcome into today's webinar, How to Be a Resilient Leader in a Changing AI World, presented by the Director of Learning and Development at TRACOM, Dr. Casey. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I will be assisting in moderating our session today. We are in Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you in an email after the session. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use the chat or that Q&A option for our dedicated Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Dr. Casey.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Just a little bit about myself. I've been about 25 years now, maybe a little bit more than that at this point in learning and development and leadership development. And before that, I even had a brief career as a clinical psychologist before I moved into this space. So all of which is related to what we're going to be talking about today, which is anxiety and all of the change that's coming from this new technology and the effects that it's having on people. So what I want to share with you is some information around that and the effect it's having on people, on their well-being and mental health, especially at the workplace. And then, of course, what do we do about it? So what I'm going to show you is some strategies that you can use as leaders to develop team resilience, to help your teams get through some of this change. And then towards the end of our time together, I'm going to share a simple and very helpful strategy that you can use to develop your own personal resilience. And as we go along, I would appreciate it if you chatted along the way, chat in your questions, chat in your comments. This is meant to be very interactive. We want to hear from you. I really want to hear from you. And I've got some help here along the way of people who will be monitoring the chat, and they can bring things to my attention as we go forward. So in the spirit of that, let's start out with a quick poll. Okay, and there it is coming up. So how nervous does AI make you? From not at all to kind of catastrophic. We'll give it a minute here before we look at some results. Ten more seconds, I've been told. Okay, so here's the results. I don't know if you can see them or not, but I'll read them out to you. 21% of people said I'm not at all nervous. The majority, 65%, are in the next category. I'm a little nervous. Makes sense. 11% I'm very nervous, and 3% of you said you're so nervous that I'm no longer saving for retirement because why bother? So those of you, those 3% who said that, I hope that after our session today, after our time, your concerns are eased a little bit. I think that they will be. But it's a very real concern. Forward here. It is a very real concern. You all know this. Every day, you almost can't keep up. You really can't keep up with all the news that's coming out about AI right now, the effects that it's having. This is a headline just from a couple of weeks ago now, I think at this point, about Salesforce and what they're doing. I just read that one of the big accounting firms are going to be laying off some people, quite a few people, who they say if they cannot be retrained for artificial intelligence. So it's affecting some industries and some occupations more than others. Right now, it seems to be white collar entry level jobs that are most affected and most at risk. But it is a very real concern, and it's causing real anxiety for some people. So let's do another poll. Going to hit you with a couple of polls right off the bat here. She'll bring it up. And this one is around how important is AI for you at work? So ranging from I never use it to it's critical to my job. Give you a minute to respond to that one. 10 more seconds. Okay, and the results are in. So 5% I never use it. 24% of you say it's useful and I sometimes use it. The majority, 64%, it's growing in importance and I'm using it more often. And then 7% say it's critical to their job. Not surprising there, especially that middle one. It's growing in importance and I'm using it more often. That's probably what is true for the majority of people. So let me show you something that I got this from courtesy of the Gallup organization of just showing how AI has changed just within the last year. And to simplify this, what this means is that 27% of white collar workers are using AI a few times a week or more. And that's compared to 9% of blue collar workers. Not surprising. That's about what you would expect. And you can see that trajectory is just going to continue to go up and up and up. I read just in the last couple of days, Google surveyed among tech workers. So this is specifically among tech workers, that 90% of tech workers use it every day. And that's up from 14% 1 year ago. So a dramatic change just in the last year. Okay. So also courtesy of Gallup around that, everybody's starting to use it, but there isn't a great deal of planning or strategy behind that. So 44% of companies now are starting to integrate it, but the organization around that and the communication around that is pretty woeful. Less than a quarter of organizations have a clear plan for how they're going to use AI and how they're going to integrate it. So it's sort of like a ready, shoot, aim approach for a lot of these companies at this point. Everybody's jumping in, everybody wants a piece of the AI pie, but there's not a lot of thought put into it or strategy put into it, it seems. And so are people encouraged to use AI? Well, I looked at a survey from Slack, and what they found is that almost half of people are reluctant to admit that they're using it for fear that it could be seen as cheating, laziness, or lack of originality. But 1 in 3 are pretending to use AI at work. So I'm no rocket scientist, but it seems like this is a contradiction that people are encouraged to be innovative, yet they're being shamed for using the technology that can actually help them to be more innovative. So another poll this time, not a poll exactly, but I just want you to chat in your answers to this. What about AI? Because there is a lot of concern out there. What exactly about AI causes stress for you? And not only you, but you think for others as well. Okay. Security, not providing the correct data information, legal issues. What if I lose my job? Elimination of jobs. Absolutely. The fear of unleashing Skynet. Susan, that I'm relying on it for my job and it will go away as a free resource. Okay. The unknown, vast knowledge it offers, job security, making it difficult to find jobs, understanding its appropriate role, that it's going to become good enough to take my job in a few years. Yeah, actually, it's a very common concern. Accounting can be done almost completely by AI, Tyler. Incorrect answers from AI. Natasha, thanks for weighing in. Security, the environmental impact, absolutely. Prospect of shadow AI in my organization and people sending out subpar work without checking it. Read something about AI hallucinations just this morning, in fact, out of Australia. That AI hallucinates things, basically makes things up, fake research, and then people just take it for granted that it's accurate. Yeah, these are great responses. So, Claire, it's mostly exciting, but it's up-leveling how people represent themselves online, so it's more competitive, it's more competition. Okay, confidentiality issues. How can I incorporate it with my job? Okay, great stuff, everybody. Fear of the unknown, over-reliance on AI by leaders, all sorts of things. So all over the board, right? There's all sorts of concerns, all sorts of reasons that people are nervous about AI. So what are some of those common stressors? You just gave them, but what are some common ones that we know from what we've seen from polling and from research? Fear of job loss or role change is a huge one, and that came out in your responses there too. What's going to happen? Am I going to lose my job? Is my job going to change dramatically? Uncertainty about future skill requirements. Do I have what it takes to still have a job, to still make an income and a living? Techno stress, so rapid adoption of technology. It's happening so fast that this in itself is very stressful to people, just trying to keep up. Concerns over surveillance and fairness, that was one of the ones that I read out loud there, sort of like the big eye in the sky of AI. And then finally, reduced sense of control at work. And that's a big one, sense of control. I'll be talking about that as we go through this, because a lot of the strategies that we're going to talk about, what they do is they bring back a sense of control to people, because right now everything feels out of control. So I talked about the effects it's having. These are some of the stressors. But what is it doing to people's mental health? And it is having a real effect. They've been starting to research this. Every year, the American Psychological Association does a survey about mental health and well-being at the workplace. And what they found just earlier this year is that 38% of people worry that AI is going to make parts or all of their jobs totally obsolete. That's a huge number. That's 4 out of every 10, essentially, people think that they're going to lose their jobs because of this. Now, of that 38% of that group, a little over half said it negatively impacted their mental health. Almost half say they're going to look for a different job. And almost 2/3 said they feel tense or stressed during the workday. Those are significant impacts. So that's 4 out of 10 people almost who are saying that it's having these effects on them day in, day out at work. That's a huge effect. I want you to keep in mind that 38%. Remember that number. I'm going to come back to that towards the end of our time together when I talk about personal resilience. And we'll talk a little bit more about that 38% who are so worried about this. One more study around mental health. This comes from Journal of Applied Psychology. And what they found is that the more people interact with AI, the more they experience these three things: loneliness, insomnia, and increased alcohol consumption. And the risks of that are that it's going to affect social connection, there won't be as much collaboration, and it'll lead to more burnout. Now, this study is interesting because it's a couple of years old already. It was done in 2023 before AI really hit the big time. So we'll see if this sort of thing, if this sort of pattern continues, this sort of trend continues. I'm not sure if it will, but we'll find out over time. But nonetheless, it is having significant effects on people, on their well-being and mental health. So as we go into change and the change that this is creating, it's helpful to think about reasons why support for change is low in general. And this is all related to AI and the change it's bringing about as well. But we know that people tend to not support change for various reasons. And a lot of that is around that number one issue, again, around AI, which is job insecurity and perceived unfairness. So, am I going to have a job because of this change? Is it being implemented in a fair way? Fatigue just from so much change happening so quickly. That change cycle is so quick now that it's almost overwhelming, and it almost always leads to heavier workloads for people at work. Low trust in leadership. Do they know what they're doing? Are they competent to be able to handle this technology, this rollout? Is it going to be fair? All sorts of trust issues. Communication is always an issue during change and during rollouts. Just not enough clear communication about what's happening. And then the skills gap and insufficient reskilling. Do I have the skills I need to confront this change, to adapt to it? Do I have the L&D opportunities to upskill myself? All very common reasons why support for change is generally low. And that can all probably be, it's a nice list, but it can be summed up simply and more memorably maybe by this little notice here. Okay, so we know what the problem is. We know what is happening, the effects it's having on people. What can we do about it? So how do we develop team resilience? So how, as a leader, can you help your team to be more resilient? Well, what am I talking about? What is resilience? What is team resilience? So adapting, recovering, and thriving in the face of adversity, challenge, and stress. And what I really want to emphasize here is that word thrive, because we all human beings have a natural ability to adapt and recover. When things happen, we can bounce back. We can get back to normal. But what we're talking about here, and what I want to share with you, and hopefully what you get out of this, is ways that you can help people bounce forward instead of just bouncing back. So how can you help people to be proactive instead of reactive, to take control and get through challenges more successfully? That's what this is all about, and that's what I want to impart to you today. And maybe you've seen a change model similar to this before. You've got your current routine. There's the big change event, which is AI for us. And then there's some resistance and letting go, and I sense that now with AI. It's almost like a capitulation is happening to everyone. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. And I feel like I don't have any control over it. And there's all this uncertainty and chaos. You're in the depths of this trough here, the valley of chaos here. And then eventually you start to recover from that. You start to adapt to it. It becomes more a normal routine. You practice it. You get back up to that next plateau where it becomes the new routine. Something helpful to think about. Um, Anticipate this. There is going to be a lot of chaos. There is going to be a lot of discomfort as part of this process. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share with you, I've got a list of 7 different things that you can do to help your teams be more resilient in the face of all this change. And what I want you to do is, instead of taking notes or screenshots or whatever, don't worry about that. As we said before, we've got a very nice looking PDF that we've created that we'll send out to you in a day or so. And it's got all 7 things I'm going to be talking about. It's got examples of them. Everything I'm going to be sharing with you today on the screen is all in that PDF. So what I want you to do is just think about these things as I'm going through this. And it's an opportunity for us to learn from one another. If you've got any comments or different ideas, maybe different things that you've done at your workplace that are related to these, please chat those in, because everybody will benefit from those as well. So the first thing you can do, no surprise, it's all around communication, being transparent and doing that frequently. So what do? Be open. How is it going to be used in the organization? Really critically, is it going to augment jobs, or is it going to replace them? That headline from Salesforce was brutal, what he said, that we don't need them, but at least it was honest, right? He was very explicit about what they're going to do. Why does that help? Why does open communication help? Well, it reduces uncertainty and anxiety. When people understand the purpose of the change, that alone is helpful. It's sort of like when you go to the doctor and you get a diagnosis for what is wrong with you. You're certainly not glad you've got it, but it can be a relief to know what's going on, what the treatment's going to be, and what the future holds. It's at some degree. So an example of how you can do that, have these regular town halls as an example, AI town halls, update everybody on the adoption plans, answer questions, open two-way communication. This is where we're at. This is what our plan is for right now. This is where we're heading. What questions do you have? Very open communication. One of the keys there is to do that frequently. I would say not a one-time event. Keep this ongoing. It's so new and so revolutionary for everybody that you really can't do this often enough. So, number two, offer training and upskilling. So, what to do here? Workshops, certification, on-the-job learning, whatever it happens to be, any opportunities that you can give to help people adapt to this new technology. And why does that help? Because it builds skill, sense of control. When people are upskilling and they're learning new things, it gives them control over themselves. They know that they've got the ability to adapt. They know that they're employable. All of that lowers their concern, lowers their anxiety. So an example of how you do that, an AI skills lab is one example. So just create an environment where people can experiment with the AI tools in a low pressure environment. Get used to it. It's brand new for a lot of people. A lot of people have been playing around with it, but they don't have a lot of experience. So create these opportunities for people to get experience and to upskill. I saw just very recently some research done by Indeed, and they were talking about how there's a lot of concern over an either or, that it's either going to be jobs lost or jobs saved. And what they're finding is that it's not so much that, it's more of a transformation where some jobs are going to have minimal transition because of AI. And the examples they gave there through their research were things like nursing, other people in medical fields, construction, things like that, up to the higher end where there's going to be a much higher degree of transformation of people's jobs. And examples of that are software development and accounting, as one of the participants pointed out, that it can really take over for accounting. So it's much more of a concern for some of these jobs. The third thing you can do, involve employees. So bring people into programs, feedback sessions, design discussions, especially about how AI is implemented. It doesn't have to be just leadership who makes these decisions. Why does that help? Ownership of the change. There's that old axiom that people support what they help create. It's very true. So let people help create this. That's going to increase the creativity around this. It's going to increase problem solving. You'll get better ideas when you involve more people like this. So an example of how you could do that, set up a cross-functional AI advisory council with staff and not just leadership. I'm just trying to check. There's a lot of different comments coming in. Charlie, I've seen a lot of outsourcing and offshoring in finance and tech to reduce labor costs. Yeah, it's some of those, like I said, it's going to be some of those industries, some of those occupations are definitely more affected than others. Fourth thing you can do, address job security and fairness. So AI is a tool that takes over some of the more mundane, repetitive things so that people can focus on the higher value, the creativity, the human-centered work. Why does that help? Well, it's all around reducing the threat of job insecurity. So it's a productivity booster. An example of how to do that. Be consistent around this. Share stories of how AI helped teams free up their time to work on other things, maybe more client interactions, more innovation, more complex problem solving. here at Educate 360 and at Tracom, we're working on developing an AI assistant also right now. And we're talking about how it's going to be, we're problem solving how it's going to be used in the classroom, how it can be used outside of the classroom as a follow-up activity. But we're talking about how it's going to augment facilitators. It's not going to replace them. It's going to help our facilitators be more creative. It's going to reinforce learning and help people develop more skills. So we're trying to be very upfront about that as we're in the process of developing these tools and these technologies. Fifth thing you can do is support psychological safety. So psychological safety, if you've heard of it or not heard of it, is just really being able to talk without fear of repercussion. So creating a safe environment, a good culture where people can voice their concerns without any fear of negative consequences, and normalizing those conversations. It's okay to talk about these things. Everybody's feeling it. It's sort of like the big elephant in the room. Don't have it be the elephant in the room. Just normalize talking about it. Why does that help? We know very clearly from our research that psychological safety is a really good, important predictor of whether teams can adapt to change. So teams that are in these safe environments, they adapt, they thrive, they bounce forward, like I mentioned before. An example of how you can do that, again, regular check-ins, normalizing those conversations. It's not a one-time deal. Just make it part of your process. Regularly check in with employees about these things, about how they're feeling, not just about performance issues. Number six, highlight the human value of all of this. So reinforce the skills AI can't replicate, the power skills, the so-called soft skills that we bring, creativity, leadership, empathy, EQ, all of these things. Why does that help? Affirms people's contributions. It counters their fears of being replaced by a machine. Remember what I said, the research is really showing people have this really intense fear that it's going to replace them. They're going to be replaced by AI. But for the vast majority of jobs and skill sets, it's going to be an augmentation, not a replacement. And we know that those soft skills, those leadership skills that people bring to the table are the ones that are necessary. We're going to be using AI, but we're going to be the decision makers. We're going to make the judgments. I mentioned a little bit before about AI hallucinations, and I just happened to read this. This happened at Deloitte in Australia, where they put out a report, a government report for the government, and they found that some of what they were quoting in there was information that was simply untrue. It had been made up for whatever reason by the AI tool that they used to create their report. So what they were doing is they weren't showing appropriate oversight of what AI can create. They weren't having their experts going in and looking and analyzing in detail the accuracy of what AI was producing. And that is still something that we very much have to do. And just in my use of AI, I've seen that multiple times where it's quoted something from a research source and I've looked it up and it wasn't quite accurate, wasn't quite what the AI told me it was. So there's always a role for us. An example of how to do that, just recognize people for their contributions. Collaboration, EQ, problem solving, all those sorts of things. And then finally, provide training and resources. So what to do? Coaching, if you can offer it, if you're in a situation where you can do that, but at the very least, resilience courses. And why does that help? Well, it gives support, normalizes the anxiety, and most important in there, gives people the tools to manage it. So when you go through a course on resilience, you're learning things that you can do to take control of your situation, to be proactive instead of reactive. And that is going to help you to get through this change, to help your team get through this change. So how do you do that? You can partner with your provider to add modules on resilience, maybe even coping with rapid workplace technology change if that's possible. And this is as close as a shameless plug as I'll get here, I hope, because obviously Tracom does have a course on resilience. But The reason we do that, the reason we developed that course is because it is designed specifically to help people with these issues, to help people adapt to change, to be more resilient. That's why we created the course. So those are the 7 things. As I said, those will be sent out as a PDF to you. What do they all have in common? I've said it multiple times. Control. You've probably seen the circle of control. When you're helping people to be more resilient, when you're doing these things to help your team, you're moving them into the center of that circle so that they have greater control over their circumstances. I'm just going to read quickly some of the comments here. Soft skills are now correctly being called power skills, a step in the right direction. Absolutely. They're differentiators. I could go on and on about that. All sorts of research showing the importance of the power skills, how those are differentiating between people because people come in maybe with technical skills. That's an entry level necessity. Beyond that, it's your leadership abilities and your power skills. Michael, in my experience, there are many AI tools that are accurate only to a 42% confidence level. They rely too much on generalizations, not on specifics. Yeah, and we're seeing that all over the place. As I said, that thing from Australia was pretty extraordinary to read, and that they would actually let those errors get through in such an important report that they were producing. I hear offhand stories like that all the time. I didn't know it was only 42%. Undoubtedly, that will improve over time, but we do need to be very careful. Heather, oh, geez, thanks, Heather. Appreciate that. My goal here is to help you. So those 7 things, start to implement those. Those will help your team. Those will help you. And what I'm going to go into now, I'm going to do another poll question. But what I want to do after that is move into something more personal that all of you can use to help yourselves to be more resilient and adaptable and to calm down. I'm thinking of that 3% who jokingly or otherwise, said how worried they were about things, and I want to give you some perspective on that I think will be helpful for you. So this one's a poll, but it's going to be entered into the chat. So just write this in. Other than recruiting, what areas of HR or training do you anticipate AI to have significant impact on over the next 3 years? So specific to HR or training. Let me give you a moment to think about that and write in your responses. Very good point there from Oana. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, about how to correctly prompt to make AI more accurate. Okay. So onboarding, couple right off the bat. Rachel, Donna, thank you. Role playing tough conversations for managers. Wow, that's a great one. That's, by the way, when I talked about the AI tool that we're developing here, that is one of the aspects of it that we're going to try to make it capable of doing. Thank you for that, Catherine. Benefits coordination, okay, yeah. Annual reviews, interesting. AI coaches to be on call when needed, interesting. Again, very, very similar to what we're thinking as we think of the future of how we can use AI here at Educate 360. Research and instructional design, yeah, absolutely. And it's very good for that. I've used it for that as well. It's very, very helpful. Of course, I have to be the decision maker behind that and see what of this is useful and what do I want to use and what do I want to change. But it's a very nice beginning. It's very helpful. Reports all in capital letters. Michael, determining the credibility of applicants' resumes. Okay, yeah, it's already being used in that. And I've seen things of how applicants are writing things into their resumes to try and move to the top of the list. It's all very, very revolutionary and happening very quickly. Compliance and legal, yeah. Processing HR paperwork. Robert, thank you for being here. Good to hear from you. Absolutely, no doubt about that. That's kind of the more not mundane, but stuff that will take pressure off of the day-to-day activities that people have to do. Chatbots, performance reviews, job applications again, screening, annual benefits review again, writing brochures, creating videos, avatars, coaching, oversight of training programs. Here's an interesting one. Kimberly, at a recent conference, a session on AI stated, if it's repetitive, automate it with AI. If it's creative, augment it with AI. If it's empathetic, keep it human. Really well put. Really, really well put. Thank you for sharing that. That's terrific. All great ideas. I agree, Tammy. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Let's move on. I'm going to go into the last section that I'm going to cover here, which is how to develop personal resilience. So we've talked about team resilience, the things that you can do to help your teams, help them. They need help. What can you do for yourself too? There's self-care involved here as well. So what is personal resilience? Very much the same as team resilience, right? Recovering, but again, the emphasis on the grow. Recovery is great, but we're all going to recover to some level. What we want to do is grow. It's more than bouncing back, it's bouncing forward. How can you be proactive? How can you take control? That's what I want to help you with today. So I think this is the last poll. And this is not a poll. This is going to be something you put into the chat again. I want you to put it in. What percent of common daily worries do you think actually happen? So of all the things you worry about on a day-to-day basis, how many of those things come true? All of them, 80%. And there's some low ones too, 5, 15, 2. Very specific, Catherine, 14%, 2%, 10, 20, 30, 40. The optimist in the group, Stephanie, none. Donna, 75%, 1%. What you focus on, you get more of. About 10%. And then Tammy with some sage advice there. I was always told that if the decision has already been made and there's nothing I can do to change it, don't waste time worrying about it. True, but as you're about to learn, there's something operating against us behind the scenes. Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate that. I'm going to answer your question in the reverse, but actually what research shows is that the answer is 9%, very specifically. 9%, so a little bit less than 10% of the things that we worry about on a day-to-day basis actually come true. So the opposite way of presenting that is that 91% of the worries, 91% of the things that we worry about and think about on a day-to-day basis never happen. And when they do happen, they typically turn out better than we think they will. So even when those things happen, it works out, tends to work out. That's what the research shows. Really interesting, really comforting, I think, as I think about this. And this is where I wanted to bring back that 38%. So remember that 38% of people from that survey from the APA who said that they're worried that AI would replace their jobs. Well, what do you think? Do you think they're right? Do you think that 4 out of 10 people are going to lose their jobs because of AI? That's a huge number. That would have massively consequential implications on society and on people. Well, are 4 out of 10 people going to lose their jobs? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that people worry a lot. We spend a lot of our times worrying. I've heard it once put very well, we're time travelers. We're very good time travelers. We spend a lot of time obsessing about the past or ruminating about the past and worrying about the future. And our brains think these things are real, but they're not. And this is why we ruminate. So why do we do this? Why do we spend so much time in a constant state of worry? Well, it's because our brains are working against us. There's something called the negativity trap, often called the negativity bias. It's neurological. We are hardwired to focus more on negative, threatening information than we are to focus on positive information. And that's evolutionary. It's a survival mechanism. Our brains evolved to look for danger. And because of this, we interpret a lot of things as threatening. Maybe you've heard of the amygdala. We have a small mechanism inside your brain called the amygdala, and its job is to look for threats. And it expends about 2/3 of its energy all day long, constantly scanning your environment for threats to your physical well-being. The problem is that in the modern world, most of those threats aren't real. And so our brain is interpreting psychological threats as threats to our well-being. So you've probably experienced this before. I'm sure you have. Everybody has. It's the fight, flight, or freeze response. You probably recognize that really uncomfortable feeling of startle, of being startled that you feel. At a very low level, day in and day out, our brains are infusing our bodies with chemicals that are very similar to that fight, flight, or freeze response. It's just at a lower level. And that causes us to think at a subconscious level in a very negative way. Let me read what some people are writing in here. Um, is this worry only associated with work? As far as what I'm talking about now, no, not at all. It's universal. It's global. Some things. And Sean's responding. Okay, thanks, Sean. Appreciate that. Keeping up with me, up with the questions while I'm blathering away here. So we all have this negativity trap. That's what causes it. Okay. So we spend an inordinate amount of time, often below our level of awareness, worrying, constantly worrying. So that 38%, my belief is that they're falling victim to this negativity trap. So what do we do about it? Remember before I mentioned that I used to work in clinical psychology. The strategy I'm going to share with you comes directly from that, from those experiences. It comes from something called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a therapeutic technique that's used to help people who have depression and anxiety in particular. But it's also used for other things. It's used for insomnia, all sorts of other purposes. It's a very effective strategy. So research has found that this is more effective for helping people than medication. So it's very effective. And what we did is we adapted it as a proactive strategy so that you can have this going forward instead of reactively after you're already suffering from anxiety. So we've turned it into an easy to remember acronym. And the first part of that acronym is called C.A.B. So what is the C? The C is the challenge. Here comes AI, right? It's happening. It's coming. Nothing we can do about that. It's happening. What happens to you as a result of that? Behavior and emotion, starting with the emotion. What do you feel? You feel fear. Fundamentally, you feel fear. You can call it anxiety, whatever you want to call it. It is fear. It's the biological fear response. This is happening below you, a little bit below your level of awareness. What do you do as a result of that? Well, you lose sleep. Maybe you don't eat well. You're constantly worried. It's affecting your mood. Maybe like that one study, maybe you're drinking too much as a result of it. So those are the things, those are the behaviors, those are the outcomes. What you probably don't know is that something else happens in between these two things, something that happens below your level of awareness. It happens immediately and it's subconscious, automatic thinking. Automatic thinking is what leads to the emotion and the behavior you're experiencing. So the automatic thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be replaced. I'll never get another job. That's it for me. I'm done. What's going to happen to my kids? Maybe I've got kids who are coming up. They're going to be out of school soon. Everything's changing so fast. Are they going to be able to make a living? Are they going to be able to get a job? They're going to be obsolete before they even got started. Everybody's got their own experience, as we saw early on when people shared their worries. Everybody has their own worries. All right. That's what's happening inside your mind. You're in a cab. When you're in a cab, you're not in control. You know what the destination is, but you're not in the driver's seat. You're being taken for a ride, essentially. That's what your brain is doing to you. Day in, day out, your brain is taking you for a ride. You're not even aware of it. It's just happening. So we're going to flip the status of that. How do we get out of that cab? Well, it's helpful to remember that most things that you worry about don't happen. So remember that 91%. You'll come out of this presentation remembering that, I hope, and push the pause button. Essentially, what this is slowing down, slowing your brain down. Push the pause button. We're getting you out of that cab and we're going to get you into the car, the next part of our acronym, CAB car. So, how do we do that? Well, guess what? The C doesn't change. The C is exactly the same. There's nothing you can do about that. AI is coming, it's happening. But what you can do is control those automatic thoughts and replace them with active thinking. How do you do that? You slow down. You catch yourself in the moment. I'm panicking. I'm having some effects that I don't want to have, some emotions that I don't want to have. Slow down, recognize that you're having those thoughts, and then actively challenge it, examine it. What is the evidence for it? Is this real, or am I just making up a story for myself? We're very good at making up stories, human beings. Even if it's real, even if it's a valid concern, are these thoughts helpful? Are they going to work for me, or are they just going to undermine me? What can I think and what can I do to help myself? Some of those active thinking strategies, some things you can think to yourself, were actually embedded in those 7 strategies that I shared before with helping your teams. I can learn new skills. I can have open and honest communication with people, et cetera, et cetera. And when you do that, when you pause, you replace those automatic thoughts with active thinking, guess what? You tend to have better outcomes, what we call realistic response. You're back in the car now. You're back in control. You're in the driver's seat. Remember, I've been emphasizing it throughout this presentation. It's all about control. How do I take control of my own life? How do I take control of my thinking, my behavior? What can I do? How can I be proactive instead of reactive? So CAB car, remember that acronym. Remember this. It's not hard to do, CAB car. It takes practice. It becomes a habit over time the more you practice it. The hardest thing about CAB car is simply remembering to do it. So in the moment, when you catch yourself, just remember, CAB car, slow down, examine your thoughts. What can I think more positively, more realistically, and that'll lead to a better outcome. So just some quick examples of what I'm talking about here with automatic thinking and active thinking. So an automatic thought, the one we've been talking about, it's going to take my job, I'll be unemployable. What is something more realistic? It's going to change parts of my job. It may, but I can learn new skills. I can adapt. I've done this before. We all have. All sorts of roles are going to be affected. It's not just me. I'm falling behind compared to younger people. They're better with tech. Well, everybody's learning. It's brand new for everybody. You've got experience. You've got all those things, those power skills that we talked about before. If I don't understand AI, I'll look incompetent. Well, it's not incompetence, it's initiative. You're asking questions, you're seeking training, you're trying to learn this new technology. That's initiative. That's the type of person who's valued. Everybody else is learning alongside you. And then finally, management only cares about AI and not about us anymore. Well, again, it's a business tool. People are still the foundation. We've got those skills. People rely on us, collaboration, judgment, you name it, all those things that we've already mentioned. So these are just some examples to kind of kickstart your thinking, because it can be hard when you're in that downward funnel. sometimes that we get into, where you're going to the dark side and you're feeling that way. We're turning you into the upward funnel here, kickstart you into starting to think about some more rational, reasonable, and realistic things that you can tell yourself around this. So that is the personal resilience, the C.A.B./C.A.R strategy. I just wanted to share with you quickly some research we've done on our own here at TRACOM showing the importance of resilience and how much it matters. We measure people on resilience. And so we measured a group of leaders. This is over 300 leaders that we looked at. And by the way, their resilience was rated by their teams, not by themselves. This is not self-report data. This is by their teams who evaluated them. And we divided them into low resilience and strong resilience and looked at various performance measures. And you can see there, uh, strong, strongly resilient leaders were 20% more comfortable initiating change. They were 18% better at helping build a positive culture. And then there's more here. These were just a few examples that we chose, but there's more here. Resilience matters. It makes a very big difference. It's worth developing. Okay, so just in summary, anxiety is real. We've clearly covered that. It's not, we're not being Pollyannish here in any sense of the word. Help your team. Look at those 7 strategies. They aren't that hard to do. You can implement them, at least some of them. That is going to help greatly. Help yourself. Use C.A.B./C.A.R to reframe your worries. Last thing there, we know this is a fact too. This comes from the research as well. When you show resilience personally, and if you're a leader, this is especially important. When you show your resilience to things and you've got the attitude that we're going to get through this, that has a huge impact on your team. It actually helps them to be more resilient. You are an important role model to your team members. And just lastly, I think, again, I said I was, plugging the program here, but we've got this program. We can do different delivery options in your organization, obviously. Web-based, we have an open enrollment version, web-based. We even have an e-learning, a self-paced e-learning program, different time versions, and then different resources that participants get. 2-part profile. One is around resilient skills that you show. One is around that negativity bias that I talked about, where you get very detailed information around that. And then some other resources, takeaway resources that we've got for you. And with that, I believe we're going to open ourselves up to some questions now.
Yeah, Casey, can you remind the audience the difference of what cab and what car stand for?
Yeah, maybe I can just reverse real quickly up there, show you the visual, show cab first. So it's the challenge, it's the automatic thinking that's going on subconsciously, and then it's the behavior and the emotion that you experience as a result. Leave it up there for a second so that people can remind themselves of that. And then the car challenge stays the same, replacing the automatic thinking with active thinking, leading to a more realistic response. Yeah, and as Sean said, we'll send the recording so you can go back and look at that. I know I go through it very quickly. We've got, just a little bit of time here. I just wanted to really to help you, to give you that strategy to help you. Wow.
Excellent. Alrighty. Well, I will go ahead and give our audience a minute to throw any last minute questions in, but I know you got to a good portion of them throughout the session. So amazing job. And we had a question about the recording. Yeah, absolutely. We will be sending it out in an email after the webinar. So I wanted to take a second to thank our amazing audience for participating and engaging. We loved hearing everything you all had to say. And of course, I wanted to thank you, Dr. Casey, for all this really fantastic information. If anyone in our audience needs any additional information on this topic, please don't be afraid to visit us at tracom.com. And we will be following up with a really amazing resource in that follow-up email with the recording, so be on the lookout for that as well. Alrighty, we're getting a lot of thank you very muches and wonderful advice. So, alrighty, I think that will be it for us today. And then, yeah, you'll be receiving that recording in an email after the webinar. Thanks for
Appreciate
asking, everyone. Alrighty. And thank you, Sean, for everything, for answering all the questions in the chat. You were fantastic.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Really appreciate you being here today.
Alrighty, y'all. We'll see y'all very soon, hopefully, and have a fantastic rest of your week. Bye for now.